The day I became the most hated man in Lakeside Estates was also the day I became its most powerful. $500. That's what Karen Wellington and her homeowners association decided to fine me for fishing with my grieving daughter. What they didn't realize was that I had 4 million reasons to fight back, and enough bitterness to use every single one of them. If you're watching this video from your phone in the bathroom just to escape another soul-crushing HOA meeting, drop a comment below and tell me where you're hiding. I promise this story will keep you hooked. My name is Remy Thornfra, and until just 2 months ago, I was living what most would call the American dream. For 15 years I built my career in venture capital and financial investment, eventually selling my shares in several tech startups for more than enough to retire at 42. But life has a cruel way of reminding you that money can't fix everything. My wife Rachel lost her fight with cancer last year, leaving me to raise our 14-year-old daughter, Solon. The grief nearly broke us both, but fishing, our last family pastime before Rachel's health failed completely, was the only thing that seemed to bring even a flicker of peace. When I decided we needed a fresh start, I searched for a place near water, quiet, healing, familiar. Lakeside Estates checked every box: upscale homes, solid schools, and a pristine 6-acre lake in the center of the neighborhood. The realtor did mention there was a homeowners association, but assured me it was just the standard stuff: lawn care, exterior paint, all routine. I should have caught the warning when she hesitated, then added, "The HOA president, Karen Wellington, is very dedicated to preserving property value." I brushed it off. After all, I'd dealt with plenty of difficult personalities in my career. How bad could one neighborhood bureaucrat really be? I got my answer on a calm Saturday morning in April. Solon and I had been fishing off the dock for about an hour, and for the first time in weeks, I saw her smile. She had just reeled in her second bluegill and was carefully unhooking it when a sharp, cutting voice broke through the quiet. "Excuse me, but what exactly do you think you're doing?" The woman striding toward us was in her late 50s, dressed in designer athleisure, blonde highlights arranged in what could only be described as the classic "I need to speak to the manager" haircut. She clutched a tablet and wore the expression of someone convinced we'd just spray-painted the dock. "Good morning," I said evenly, keeping my voice polite. "Just enjoying some fishing with my daughter." I extended my hand. "I'm Remy Thornfra. We just moved into the house on Sycamore Drive about 2 months ago." She didn't so much as glance at my outstretched hand. Instead, she tapped sharply on her tablet. "Mr. Thornfra, fishing is explicitly prohibited in our community lake. This is a direct violation of HOA regulations. I'm Karen Wellington, HOA president." She said the title like she was declaring royal lineage. "I'll have to issue a violation notice. The fine is $500. I felt Solon stiffen beside me. "There must be some mistake," I said, keeping my voice even. "The realtor specifically told me fishing was one of the community amenities. It was actually a selling point for us." Karen's thin smile never touched her eyes. "The regulation was amended last month. All residents were notified via email. Ignorance of the rules doesn't excuse you from following them." She rotated her tablet to face me, displaying a document titled Amendment to Recreational Use of Community Lake. The approval date was barely 4 weeks old. "We never received any notification," I said firmly. "I personally oversee all communications." "The email was sent to every household," Karen replied with absolute conviction. "Perhaps you should check your spam folder." Of course, I can't be responsible for residents who don't bother to read official communications. My jaw tightened, though I forced my tone to stay calm. "May I ask why fishing was suddenly banned? This lake is clearly stocked. I can see bass swimming right there near the shallows." Karen's eyes flicked toward our rods and tackle box, her dismissal plain. "Environmental and safety concerns. Hooks can injure wildlife, and there have been complaints about the smell of fish and bait disturbing residents who simply want to enjoy the view of the lake from their homes." She made the word homes sound pointed, as if we were trespassers instead of residents. "Not everyone wants to look out from their patio and see this." Her lips curled slightly as she gestured toward our modest gear. That tone, contempt hidden behind politeness, made me study Karen more carefully. The way she inspected our equipment with disdain, the practiced superiority in her stance. This wasn't about fish, hooks, or even lake rules. "We're being very careful," I said quietly. "Solon and I always practice catch and release," I said evenly. "And we make sure to clean up completely when we're done." Karen's expression stiffened. "Mr. Thornfra, perhaps you don't understand how things work here at Lakeside Estates. We maintain certain standards in this community. This is not a public fishing hole. Residents who've lived here for years expect a particular atmosphere." Her eyes flicked to Solon, then back to me. "New residents sometimes struggle to adapt to our community culture. People who are more accustomed to, shall we say, different types of neighborhoods." The implication hit like a slap, and anger surged through me. I opened my mouth to respond, but a small sniffle cut me off. Solon's eyes were brimming with tears. This dock, this lake, it was supposed to be our place of healing, the one spot where she could forget, even briefly, that her mother was gone. And now this woman was tearing it away with her smug, veiled superiority. "We'll pack up," I said quietly, wrapping my arm around Solon's shoulders. "Please email me the details of the fine, and the complete, updated regulations." Karen's smile returned, triumphant. "Excellent. I'm glad we understand each other. And do check your email more carefully in the future, Mr. Thornfra. We wouldn't want any further misunderstandings." She pivoted sharply and walked off, her pristine sneakers barely bending the manicured grass. As Solon and I gathered our things, she wiped her eyes. "Dad, why was that lady so mean? We weren't hurting anything." I didn't have a real answer, not one suitable for a 14-year-old. After a long pause, I managed, "Some people like rules more than they like people, sweetheart. Come on. Let's go home and have some lunch." Later that day, after scouring my inbox and even the spam folder, and finding no trace of any fishing ban notice, I started digging into the HOA. What I found was eye-opening. Karen Wellington had served as HOA president for 8 consecutive years. By day, she ran a small but exclusive real estate company that specialized in luxury communities. On her own social media, I found plenty of photos from lakeside parties, the same lake she'd just fined me for using, with catered food, alcohol, and booming music. Apparently, her concerns about community atmosphere didn't apply to her own gatherings. Even more telling was a clause buried deep in the HOA bylaws. The lake was listed as common property, an amenity belonging to all residents. Nowhere did it grant the HOA unilateral control over its use. That evening, I sat by my window, staring out at the lake. That evening, I spotted Karen at the lakeside gazebo with a group of friends. Wine glasses in hand, they laughed loudly as if the entire lake existed for their amusement. "So, they want to play the rules game," I muttered under my breath. "Fine. But first, I need to know who actually owns this water." The next morning, while stepping out to grab the paper, I ran into an older gentleman walking his dog past my house. He introduced himself as Merrick Henderson, a retired attorney who lived 3 doors down. When I mentioned my unpleasant encounter with Karen Wellington, his cheerful expression soured instantly. "Ah, you've met our neighborhood dictator," he said with a grimace. "Let me guess, she cited some obscure regulation and slapped you with a fine." When I nodded, Merrick shook his head. "Karen's been running this place like her personal fiefdom for years. Most folks just pay up and keep their heads down." He glanced around the street, then lowered his voice. "If you want some real background, come by for coffee. I've got plenty of HOA horror stories, and the paperwork to prove them." I accepted, and later that afternoon found myself in Merrick's living room. His walls were lined with law books and framed photographs of colleagues and clients. Over a cup of coffee that was better than anything I'd had in months, he began unraveling the truth about Lakeside Estates. "Here's what most residents don't realize," Merrick said, pulling a thick folder from his cabinet. "The lake isn't actually owned by the HOA. It still belongs to Meridian Development Corporation, the original developers. The HOA only leases recreational rights for a 30-year term. That's what gives Karen and her board the power to set usage rules." He tapped a page with a yellow highlight. "But here's the kicker, the lease expires in less than 2 months." That made me sit up straight. So what happens then? Technically, Merrick said, leaning back, Meridian could renew the lease, sell the lake outright to the HOA, or offload it to someone else entirely. And most residents? They have no idea. They all think the HOA owns everything. He leaned forward, lowering his voice like he was about to share a secret. But here's where it gets interesting. I've heard through a few contacts that Meridian is in financial trouble, Merrick said. They may be looking to liquidate assets quickly. And our friend Karen? She already knows this. For the next hour, Merrick and I pored over public records. What we uncovered painted a picture of Karen far more manipulative than a simple HOA tyrant. Through a maze of shell companies tied to her real estate business, she had quietly been acquiring properties across the neighborhood. Time and again, residents forced to sell, often after being ground down by relentless fines and violations, ended up losing their homes for well below market value. And who bought them? Companies with hidden ties to Karen. She's after something bigger now, Merrick concluded grimly. From what I've gathered, she's been in private talks with Meridian to purchase the lake outright, not for the HOA, but for her own development firm. She wants to restrict access and eventually line the shore with luxury homes. Suddenly, the fishing ban made sense. It was never about protecting wildlife or preserving tranquility. It was about gradually tightening control, laying the groundwork for a complete takeover. That's when Merrick introduced me to another ally, Samuel Washington, a retired local bank owner and one of the few residents who openly opposed Karen's reign. Samuel, an elegant man in his 60s with a sharp wit, had experienced Karen's quiet brand of discrimination himself. He welcomed us into his study the following evening and gestured toward his computer screen, filled with meticulously organized spreadsheets. I started this as a simple record-keeping project, he explained. But the more I tracked, the more I realized there was a pattern to Karen's enforcement. The data was damning. Homeowners of color received violation notices nearly 3 times more often than white neighbors. New residents were cited for trivial infractions that long-standing homeowners were allowed to ignore. Most telling of all, properties that sold below market value due to mounting compliance issues almost always ended up purchased by shell companies tied back, through layers of LLCs, to Wellington's real estate empire. She never buys directly, Samuel said, scrolling through property records. Instead, she uses entities like Lakeside Investments, Wellington Holdings, Sierra Vista Properties. Different names, but all leading back to her. It's clever enough to avoid suspicion, but not clever enough to hide from someone who knows where to look. He showed me records of 6 homes acquired this way in the past 5 years. The pattern was identical each time: excessive HOA violations, declining property value, a desperate sale, then a flip for massive profit after cosmetic renovations. Merrick leaned back, his face grim. The lake is her endgame. Meridian's been bleeding since the recession. They overextended into commercial projects, and they've been liquidating residential assets to cover debts. The lake was never truly guaranteed as permanent green space anyway. The original development plan from 30 years ago included lakefront condos, but environmental restrictions blocked it. Those restrictions have since eased. With the right friends at City Hall, which Karen definitely has, permits for limited construction could slide through, Samuel added. Half a dozen luxury homes could bring in 7, maybe 8 million. My professional instincts stirred. Tell me more about Meridian's financials, I said. Years in venture capital had trained me to recognize a distressed asset and an opportunity. Over the next few days, Samuel tapped his network of banking colleagues to provide quiet insights into Meridian's condition. The picture was bleak. The company had poured millions into a commercial development that collapsed after anchor tenants backed out during the pandemic. Their credit lines were maxed. They were quietly offloading unencumbered assets, like the lake, valued at roughly $300,000, in order to avoid bankruptcy. Meanwhile, Merrick had been organizing discreet gatherings of frustrated residents. We rotated meeting spots, sometimes Samuel's home, sometimes a private room at the library, once even the back of a sympathetic neighbor's bakery. The stories people shared painted a clear and ugly pattern. She hit me with a violation for excessive holiday decorations the day after I spoke against her at a council meeting, said James Morris, a retired teacher. I've been using the same Christmas lights for 15 years. Suddenly they're a violation under some obscure brightness ordinance. Heads nodded around the room. Different stories, same theme: intimidation, harassment, fines, and a slow bleed of property value until Karen's companies swooped in. My foster children were banned from the community pool for being too loud, shared Maria Gonzalez, a healthcare worker raising 3 foster kids. Karen's grandchildren wanted to use the pool at the same time. When I asked what rule we'd broken, Karen said it was her executive decision as HOA president. Diana Winters, a young widow who'd moved in just before me, told her story next. Karen personally led an inspection committee through my backyard, claiming to check for mosquito breeding grounds. 2 days later, I had 5 violation notices in my mailbox, all things my neighbors have too, but none of them were cited. When I pointed it out, Karen just said, "Maybe this community isn't the right fit for someone in your situation." Each testimony followed the same playbook: isolate dissenters, apply selective pressure through HOA rules, and either force compliance or drive them out. Those who stayed learned to keep their heads down. Those who fought back faced relentless harassment. Through these meetings, we began mapping out potential allies. Samuel set up a secure messaging group where residents could share information and experiences away from Karen's prying eyes. It felt like building an underground resistance, right inside our own neighborhood. Meanwhile, I dug into Karen's personal financial situation. Years in investing had taught me how to read between the lines of filings and property records. What I discovered was telling. Despite the polished image of success, Wellington Properties was stretched thin. Karen had taken out multiple lines of credit against her holdings, almost certainly to fund her lifestyle and cover the costs of acquiring more homes. If her lake development deal collapsed, she'd be in serious financial trouble. She isn't just chasing profit, I explained to Merrick and Samuel during one of our sessions. She's fighting for survival. She's overextended. The lake isn't a luxury play for her, it's a lifeline. That makes her dangerous. But it also makes her vulnerable. At Samuel's suggestion, I reached out to Robert Chen, a real estate broker with insider knowledge of the local market. We met 20 miles away in a quiet coffee shop to avoid any chance of word spreading back to the community. Karen's been scrambling to put together financing to buy the lake, Robert confirmed in a low voice. Meridian is in free fall financially. They gave her a 60-day exclusive negotiation period, but honestly, they're desperate. If someone walked in with cash today, they'd probably take it. He leaned closer. Here's the thing, Wellington Properties looks impressive on paper, but it's mostly smoke and mirrors. She's leveraged to the teeth. Without this lake, she's about 3 bad months away from collapse. That's why she's so aggressive. She needs a big win to keep her creditors quiet. The pieces were falling into place. As a venture capitalist, I'd made my career identifying distressed assets with hidden value. This lake was exactly that. I had the capital to make an immediate all-cash offer that Meridian would find irresistible. The question now was strategy. We wait, Samuel advised. Let her commit herself publicly. She'll announce a special assessment for lake improvements, sell it to the community, maybe even to her lenders. The more she ties her reputation and resources to this project, the harder the fall when we pull the rug out. Merrick nodded. The more she spends, money, favors, political capital, the more devastating the blowback when the truth comes out. And the more likely the community will finally turn on her. Our coalition grew, our plans sharpened. To the outside world, and especially to Karen's network of informants, we looked like nothing more than a loose group of grumblers documenting HOA overreach. Karen clearly suspected we were meeting. The sudden uptick in random violation notices against our members made that obvious. But she had no idea what we were truly planning. With Robert's help, I arranged a discreet meeting with Tom Branson, the Meridian executive overseeing the sale of the lake. This was it, the point of no return. We met in a private conference room at a downtown law office, far from the curious eyes of Lakeside Estates. As Robert had warned, Meridian was desperate. "Look, I'll be straight with you," Tom said after we wrapped up the formalities. "We gave Wellington Properties a 60-day exclusive window. But there's a clause: if another offer comes with guaranteed fast closing, we can take it." Karen's still scrambling for investors, but frankly, We needed cash yesterday. What's her offer? I asked. 300,000, Tom replied, shaking his head. Paid out over 18 months, with a messy financing structure. Honestly, he sighed. It's more headache than it's worth. I leaned back in my chair, already calculating. The battle for Lakeside Estates was about to begin in earnest.